Welcome to our new Sales Mastery course that we've developed for sales managers. This is our first class where we'll discuss the basics of sales and buyer psychology. This is what we have today. It's traditionally held in an open format, and we upload it to YouTube. Why should you take a sales course? We train you here in a large number of techniques. I'll show you next how many there are. By mastering these techniques, well, techniques like spin selling, AID, FB, band, and many others, you'll begin to understand how to properly identify customer needs and offer them ideal solutions. And soon you'll become one of the best salespeople in your company, resulting in a significant increase in your income. This is the course website. This is what it looks like. Let's get to know each other a little bit. I'll tell you about myself. My name is Mike Pritula, and I'm going to tell you about my experience, primarily my sales experience, since this course is about sales. So my name is Mike Pritula, and I've actually been involved in sales for quite a long time. My first sales experience was, I'm not going to talk about any childhood sales, because I participated in selling with my grandfather and brother, selling various things. My grandfather sold seeds, my brother sold at the market, but it was more of a passive involvement. I've never been a stranger to selling things. Later, I sold some fruits myself, but that's not so interesting. I studied at a banking academy, and my first job was an internship. It was at Microsoft's bank in the VIP client department. I was a loan officer, and my job was to sell credit products. They put me in the most challenging area, cold calling. I had a database of potential clients. My task was to call them, tell them about our offers, and get them interested in our products' credit benefits. Then, after I finished my studies, I went to another bank, Alpha Bank. It was no longer an internship, but a full-time position where I issued loans, sold loans for 3 months. I processed many loans. During my internship, I even broke a sales record by selling 28 loans in one day. Then I moved into HR, but not just HR, I became a trainer and recruiter. It's interesting because I'm going to talk about that too. Recruiting is very much about sales and has many similarities. Secondly, as a trainer, I taught the loan officers I recruited how to sell. In other words, during my first 6 months in this role as a recruiter trainer, I trained about 100 loan officers on how to sell banking products. I even found a presentation from 2005 that I used for training. There were many such presentations. Then I worked at the STB TV channel at Wargaming Company. At Wargaming, I was a business partner in the commercial division. There it's called publishing. At Preply Ideal, I consulted for PeopleForce, and then created MacPlay Tele Academy, which is specifically in the Academy format. If I remember correctly, it's been about 7 years now. Before that, there were various courses in different formats. And of course, the Academy is also involved in sales because it's an integral part of business, and I recently launched another direction. Another product, Dad? There are no sales there yet, it's a beta version, sales are still a long way off. Thus, I can confidently say that I've been in sales since 2005. I love to sell. I have a hobby, it's like a side business, an additional one. It's selling tube amplifiers. There are sales there too. In general, sales is definitely my thing. In my work, I rely on best practices. Here's a list of what I track. And for those watching on YouTube, I'd appreciate if you could write in the comments what your job title is and where you work. In this course, we have homework assignments, completing which will allow you to receive our diploma, our Academy diploma. We issue it on a top online platform. It's a very solid document. Next, this course consists of 6 sessions. Today we'll cover the basics and a bit of buyer psychology. Then we'll talk about methods for finding and attracting clients, sales and negotiation techniques, time management and productivity in sales, using technology and CRM in sales, and analyzing results and improving processes. The course is universal. It covers techniques that can be used in B2B in sales, regardless of the type of clients or business. In other words, this knowledge will be useful for all salespeople who sell something. I'd also like to convey another thought. I tried to make this course as practical and concise as possible. I've counted about 37 different tools and techniques here, and they are listed in each lesson. In general, everything that the world knows best about selling, all those approaches, tools, and practices, we will study all of this. So our goal is to arm ourselves with the most advanced sales technologies, study them, and try to practice them in homework assignments and after completing the course. The first program, or rather the first lesson, is an introduction to sales, the basic stages of sales, and buyer psychology. We'll talk about the value proposition, establishing trust, and creating long-term relationships. Let's get started. I'd like to start today's session, our first session, by saying that sales is actually one of the most crucial skills because we're always selling something. It's simply a part of our lives. We sell ourselves in job interviews when negotiating employment. We can sell our unwanted items on websites, things, appliances, apartments, cars. We sell our ideas and beliefs when we engage in dialogue with someone and want to get something from them we're selling. We sell our needs to be heard and understood. And we sell to many people. We sell to our partners, spouses, colleagues, friends, clients, even ourselves when we try to convince ourselves of something. So by doing this regularly and constantly, even sometimes without realizing it, we should be experts at it. Not to mention that in many professions, sales is also an important skill, for example, for recruiters. In recruiting, sales is a small part of the job. It's important for marketers. It's useful for many job positions. The first thing I'd recommend is to understand that salespeople come in different forms. They sell differently. There are various personality types. Some sell aggressively, some smoothly, some trustingly, some analytically. I know a huge number of salespeople and sales managers. I've hired and trained many. Each salesperson is unique. So it's really good for you to better understand yourself, your sales style, how you'll do it. You don't need to copy another salesperson. You might see a very active, aggressive salesperson and think, I can't do that. I'm not like that in life. That doesn't mean you have to be. Yes, hello, Michael Pesca. So the first thing I'd recommend you start with is taking a personality test. There's a great website. Then send this request to ChatGPT, but insert your personality type based on the test results, and ask the chat to advise you on how to use your personality type in sales, so you can tailor your sales approach to yourself and adapt it all for you. So that's my first recommendation, and that's the first tool today. Let's move on. Introduction to sales. You need to understand that sales is actually a very important part of any business. And salespeople are some of the most important people. I would put recruiters first because recruiters bring in people or bring in anyone, then salespeople because salespeople bring in clients. Simply, if there's no recruiter, there will be no salespeople. What does sales do in business? First, it's the main driver of company growth. Without sales, without a sales organization, the company won't grow. Second, it's the link between the product and the market. The product may be perfect, there may be market demand, but without properly communicating the product's value to the end consumer, nothing will happen. They shape the company's sales and reputation. Because if sales are done well, with quality service, there will be a positive reputation. They influence marketing strategy because they provide feedback to marketing. Salespeople communicate a lot with customers and understand customer needs. They create long-term relationships with customers because in many types of sales, especially where there are many repeat sales, the salesperson's personality plays a huge role. If a customer has built a good relationship with a salesperson, they'll be favorable and may even buy more than they need. Next, here's another interesting diagram, the value chain that Mr. Porter once drew. He showed that there are divisions that create value for the customer and customers pay for it. There are departments that support the company's activities, and marketing and sales is one of the key departments that create value in the business. Without this division, the business can't be considered complete. What else do sales provide? They allow adaptation to changing market conditions. The sales department and salespeople can quickly inform marketing and management about changes in consumer needs and what changes the company needs. They increase competitiveness. If the sales strategy is built effectively, the company can outperform competitors even if it has a weaker product, even if it has weaker marketing. And a company can have many disadvantages compared to competitors, but with a successful sales department, that company will capture the market. I've observed multiple times when companies achieve growth through sales alone. Business process optimization. Sales, like litmus paper, will show what's wrong. It's important, of course, that companies know how to listen to their salespeople at this point, because if a company ignores this, it's a road to nowhere. Product development innovation, because customer interaction provides insights to improve products, and financial stability of the company. A stable sales stream provides financial stability and opportunity for further investment and growth. That's the role of sales in business. It's a very important function, an important division. So, if you're in this role, understand that it's quite a responsible and very important role in the company. Next, what are the main stages of sales? We often talk about selling and assume it's the process of exchanging money for goods or services. In reality, it's much broader than that. At minimum, there are 4 stages of sales. The first is attracting the attention of your target audience to yourself and your product. This is where marketers do most of the work. So salespeople themselves may not need to focus as much on this stage. Then, building interest among those whose attention you've captured. There can be different tools used here. This can also be part of the marketing phase. Next is creating desire. This is where salespeople start to get involved. We'll look at a tool today that helps with this. And finally, providing an incentive to take action. This is where salespeople have the biggest influence. Nudging the customer a little bit towards action, maybe even just slightly. Because when salespeople do this push towards buying, many more customers are likely to make a purchase. We're going to talk now about the stages a client goes through. Many clients are often in a state of indecision and uncertainty, and when there's that little nudge, they become willing to buy. Accordingly, many in sales use a technique called AIDA, an acronym for attention, interest, desire, action. They portray it as a funnel. The idea is that we try to reach as many people as possible at the start to draw attention to ourselves. Some portion will develop an interest to learn more details. Some of those who were interested will then desire our product or service, and a smaller portion will take action. That is, they will make a purchase. So marketing and sales are often built around this concept. Let's move on. This funnel approach is also changing a bit now, being revisited. In this classic approach, we assume that at each stage, some portion of potential customers are filtered out, and we essentially forget about them forever, no longer interested. The modern approach is called the flywheel. It was developed by a company called HubSpot. I would say that HubSpot is one of the leaders in sales. They developed a CRM for sales. They have a great book, The Sales Acceleration Formula, and I even attended a conference where Mark Roberge, the author of the book and VP of Sales at HubSpot, spoke. He probably drew the largest audience at that conference. It was at SaaStr in San Jose, USA. So, the modern flywheel is about not filtering out customers and leaving fewer and fewer paying people. Instead, we create a kind of vortex around us, thanks to various customer activities that sooner or later lead them to make a purchase. But this is more for sales managers and marketers. We won't delve deeply into it here. We'll focus on more practical things. In terms of sales steps, what do the sales steps look like? The first is preparation. Market research of the target audience and competitors. We're going to talk about that today, and we'll continue in the second session. That is, the salesperson needs to understand who their client is, who their competitors are, and what pains and desires the client has. Then comes the search for an attraction of potential clients, which will also be covered in a separate session. Then establishing contact. We'll break down a number of techniques for this today, then we move on to identifying needs. And this is one of the most crucial parts of sales. Although, people often ask, do you have training on handling objections? How do you deal with objections? In fact, what is an objection? It's an attempt to sell something to someone who doesn't have a need. And the person objects by saying, I don't have a need, I don't want it. This happens when needs haven't been properly identified. Because in some cases, a salesperson won't even try to sell to a person who doesn't have a need, realizing that person definitely won't pay. Then comes the presentation of the product or service. It's also very important to apply techniques here, which we'll discuss today. Then we work on handling objections, some of which may arise even if we've identified needs and done all the work. We'll also cover this in our course. Then comes closing the deal, and then customer support and after-sales service. Of course, other departments may get involved here, such as customer success, which further guide the clients. But still, customers love to return to their original salespeople. Even as a customer myself, when companies passed me on to other managers, I still remembered who my original salesperson was, who sold me something. Or even as an individual when I bought a car, the salesperson. He's no longer interested in me, and I'm basically no longer interested in him. I'm more interested in the service now. But I still remember that salesperson. I come in and say hello and so on. There's also another scheme of sales steps, which differs slightly in steps, but not significantly. And for each stage, there are specific tools, templates, prepared materials, and so on. The task of a successful sales manager is not only to know the sales steps, but also to know what to do. To have these tools, have these templates, but also to be prepared. That is, we'll study part of this in this course, and part will need to be adapted and developed for yourself. One of the most powerful techniques in sales is called the spin technique. If I had to train salespeople on only one technique and I had to choose, I would definitely choose spin. Situation. How it came about? It was developed in the 1970s, after studying 30,000 of the best sales and the salespeople who made them, 10,000 from 23 countries. He found that the best salespeople listen more than they talk and ask the right questions at the right time. And to him, it seemed more like consulting than selling. So he said, let's call this the consultative sales method. In this consultative sales method, the relationship with the buyer is more important than the sale itself. And basically, that's the key to successful sales. It works in recruiting, it works in B2B and anywhere else. When more attention is given to building relationships and less to the sale itself, the customer will still come and buy. The likelihood is much greater than if there's just a desire to push a sale. I've had several situations in my life where something was pushed on me and I was somehow pressured and persuaded. I had such a bad attitude towards salespeople afterwards. It felt like you were used and never wanted to go back there again. Or there were situations where I felt like I was being so pressured they just wanted to sell something here and now, which I generally didn't like either. And on the other hand, when they build more of a relationship with me, tell me something, study me, then it's interesting. Then it's interesting to communicate with such a person. What the spin technique says. What is it? What's the point? There are going to be 4 stages that we're going to explore right now. The point is not to just sell your product or service to the customer, but to sell to the customer the benefits that this product will give to this customer based on the customer's needs and wants. Accordingly, it all happens through questions. So the right sequence of questions nurtures the customer and makes the customer ripe to buy the product. And then comes a short, very focused presentation of the product, what they call in English a laser focus. I don't even know how to translate it. There is a very focused presentation of the product with the clearest possible understanding of the customer. This diagram is for you. You can print it out and carry it with you, but we will now go through all the steps of spin technology in more detail. The spin technology itself is built around 4 stages of seller-buyer communication: discussing the buyer's current situation, identifying existing problems, helping the buyer to realize the implications that have been identified for them, and finding the buyer's need and the benefits the buyer can receive when the problems are subsequently resolved. And this will be realized through the product or service that is offered to the customer. How do we do it? We ask questions. I'll show some sample questions, but depending on who your buyer is, you'll have very different ones, in many ways different. That is, you will need to adapt them for yourself. We'll talk more in the next class about creating a buyer persona. It's critical to be as clear as possible about who your buyer is. That is, when you sell something, you have to understand, for example, when we launched courses at the Academy, I thought long and hard about who my student is, what they look like. And I formed an image there. It's easier for me to communicate with these people somehow. So here's the first set of questions. Here we are trying to study a person and examine who they are, what's going on in their life, what they do. Again, depending on whether it's some kind of B2B sale, maybe a business or whatever. Well, examples. Tell us about yourself and your role. Talk about your current experience with a similar product or service. How long have you been using the solution? There's a very important question here. Why did you choose what you have now? By the way, you can make your life easier if you use ChatGPT. Describe the context. Say, I sell this and that to such and such a target audience. Help me compose questions for the 4 stages of spin technology. Depending on what you do and who your buyers are, you can use these kinds of alternative questions. So we're going to have a lot of questions for each of the 4 phases that will be basic first and then alternative supplemental questions. When the customer has told you in detail who they are, what they do, what they live for, what's important to them, how such purchases have been made in the past, you're further helping the client realize the problems that exist because they don't have this product or service that you're offering. For example, you can create questions like these. What do you like most about the current solution now? What do you dislike most? How is the cost? How is the service? Again, additional questions that you can use. Then you need to shift yourself at that moment and remember that you are building a relationship. That's the key to success. That is, you need to not try to sell the customer something here and now, no matter what you are selling. Instead, think about the fact that at this moment, when you are communicating using the spin technique, you are building a relationship with a person who will definitely buy something from you someday. and it doesn't have to be right now and exactly the product you have. As a seller, you will most likely be selling something for a long time to come. And by building a network of these buyers and potential customers, you can always offer this buyer something else, even if you are in another company. So feel that maybe the product you offer, maybe you don't think it's the best. Maybe you work at a store that sells Chinese cars, and you're not really a fan of Chinese cars yourself, but think about it. You're getting to know the customer, you're studying them, learning about them. Tomorrow you could be working at BMW or Mercedes or Volvo. And that customer, if they don't buy from you today, might buy from you tomorrow. So invest in long-term relationships, knowing that they may not pay off immediately. But experience shows that when you start treating clients this way, they're more likely to buy now compared to when you try to force a sale now and customers either never buy or buy much later. Then after discussing the problems, you need to talk about the consequences. You need to help the person realize what consequences they face due to their current problems related to not having your product or service. Questions could be like this. Are you able to fulfill yourself with your current job? This is an example if we were trying to sell someone on a job opening. I'm trying to give different examples. Do you experience burnout at work? Are you able to grow and develop in your career? Do your colleagues value your contributions and listen to your opinions? So through questions, you're trying to help the person identify the consequences of their problems. When we talk about creating a customer profile in our next class, you'll better understand what issues your customers most often face, and you'll be able to fine-tune these questions even more. Here are more examples of questions. Finally, the last block of questions in the spin technique is about needs or wants. For example, if we were talking about selling a job opportunity, we might ask questions like, if you were changing jobs right now, what would your expectations be? What would you do with an increase in income? What direction of development would you choose in a new company? How would you balance work and personal life? If you're selling a car, for instance, you could ask where they'd go first. As you consider how, for example, if the person had an old car and you're selling a new one, you could say, you'll save a lot of money on maintenance. Where will you spend it? These are the kinds of questions. Well, and more examples of questions. Next, the psychology of the buyer. How do you understand your customer's needs and motivations? It's very important to realize that in selling, identifying needs and understanding motives is generally one of the key steps. You need to understand the basic customer needs and what's important to your target audience, because different customers in different target audiences have completely different needs. You need to examine shopping motives, why they buy. You need to research customer behavior and habits, their preferences. Look at those customers who have already bought. It's also helpful to recognize psychological triggers. What triggers a person to make a purchase? What's the pain point? If you find it, you can push it every time and people will buy. When I'm being sold something, they try to push some point and force me to buy now. Sometimes I can really feel it working. An emotional connection with the client is also important. Then you have to not just offer a product or service, but you have to build a value proposition. You need to understand what types of customers there are. Chances are you have different types of customers. It's very helpful to gather feedback from customers, actively listen, and constantly learn and adapt. We'll cover some aspects of buyer psychology today, and we'll continue to cover others later in the course. The first thing we need to understand about buyer psychology is how buyers buy. We often think about how we sell, what we sell. We rarely put ourselves in the buyer's shoes. The customer initially has indifference to one product or another. Then comes the realization of the problem. Oh, right, I need that. Then awareness of finding a solution. The person thinks, okay, I need this. What are my options? Then comparison, the person compares, then the selection stage where they pick a finalist, and then the purchase. You should know all these steps and accompany your customer at each stage, helping them to buy your product. All your activity should be built around this sequence of actions. Next, buyers often experience something called FOMO, fear of missing out, and it's great to take advantage of that. That's sales psychology too. It's about how customers make some purchases simply because they think that if they miss out, they'll be too late. Everyone's buying it, so I bought it too. Next, when presenting your products to customers, it's very useful to use the FABI technique: features, advantages, and benefits. That is, the characteristics of your product or service, its advantages, and what customer needs it will satisfy. This is how it works. We recognize what we offer the client, why it's generally good, and why the client needs it. So we need to frame the conversation this way. For example, let's break down a few situations like this. You're selling a laptop. The laptop has a feature. For example, an Intel Core i7 processor, the latest generation. Advantage. Thanks to the powerful processor, the laptop provides high performance and speed. Benefit. It allows you to quickly process large amounts of data, run resource-intensive applications, and work without lag, which increases your productivity and saves time. Here, it's advisable to use benefits that are relevant to the buyer. In particular, the spin technique helps to identify these benefits. The steno dialogue is constructed simply as a sequence of telling characteristics, advantages, and benefits. There will be an example here for project management that is such a great B2B, also selling a car, well, and so on. That is, you can prescribe this technique for any product or service. The next technique useful in sales is the customer expectation sheet technique. It is a method used to identify and structure the client's expectations and needs. And it helps you understand exactly what your customer is looking for in a product or service. What is important to him and what his requirements are. Often, when salespeople don't think about it or don't remember it, they start suggesting some kind of features to the customer. That the client says, yes, I don't care, I don't need it, and I don't care, forgetting that the client has his own criteria by which the product is chosen. That's the way to use it. First, you need to gather information. Through questions, find out what the expectations are, what the needs are. Well, first of all, questions from spin technique can help you. Second, direct questions. For example, what are the main criteria that are important to you when choosing a product? Next, based on customer responses, you need to make a list of expectations or requirements for yourself and then prioritize. And then, when we understand which requirements are the most important, it is your job to map to the product and present your product, tying into those requirements. You said the important criterion for you is this. And our product, it's got just this right here that's going to allow you, and you're talking about customer benefits here. Customer expectations can be very different. These may be functional needs. That is, some features that your product or service should have. These can be social needs. A person somehow wants to look among others using your product. These may be emotional needs, more internal. That is, pay attention to all kinds of need, because sometimes the client cares about some social or emotional needs. The salesperson is trying to figure out what functional needs are important, like with an iPhone. People often buy iPhones not because of the cool features. Either because in their eyes having an iPhone is cool in front of other people or for yourself. They associate the iPhone with Steve Jobs, with Apple. They think that company is cool, famous, and they want to associate themselves with that. Therefore, it is important to pay attention to more than just the functional ones. How to use it? Here again, a case study example of how this can be leveraged sales. What I would recommend you do. At the beginning of this presentation, all the tools of all the classes are written out, including today's class and the one after that. All these tools and techniques are given in the form of some algorithms and often examples. But to make it work for you, I would recommend rewriting all of these tools and techniques for yourself and testing them out in real time to your work. I am going to help you with this a little bit because in the homework assignments, I am going to ask you to pick something to put into practice you are going to have to do. But homework assignments will not include a requirement to do everything. I hope you will do all the examples on your own. Next, creating a value proposition. The value proposition is such an interesting thing because it seems like marketers should be doing it, but marketers do not always do it. Not always marketers are companies. They can be just some advertisers who place ads. So it will often need to be done by salespeople. Creating a value proposition is the process of defining and communicating the unique values of your product or service that fulfills needs, solves customer problems. It is, they say unique selling proposition, UTP. The value proposition should clearly explain why customers should choose your product among the many other offerings in the market. And the value proposition is the foundation of any company's business model. If we take the template of Astroworld's business model, the business model that businesses are generally born from, at the center of it is the value proposition. That is, the businessman creating a business must find an answer to the question, what is the value of the product for Zakat? What problems help to solve, in what it is different from competitors. Well, here's an example of a company called Uber. When the first one came out, it was a great value at all with the offer. You can order without having to call anywhere. Steps to create a value proposition. You need to study your target audience, identify key issues, and analyze your competitors. In general, any salesperson should know the competition well, what competitors have, what they offer, what features, and so on. Next, you need to identify the unique benefits of your product, formulate a value proposition, test it, see how people react to it, get feedback, maybe change something, and then commiserate on a regular basis. Here would be an example of a value proposition. Again, my recommendation to you in a template for yourself, for your product, is to describe it. And today, to supplemental material for this lesson, I'm attaching a class presentation from HubSpot where they give value proposition templates. First of all, there are templates out there in the form of tables that you can and should fill out with instructions. Secondly, there are some examples of about 9, and these are sample slides. You'll have this as additional materials in your personal account. The next technique for salespeople is called mirroring. In sales, it is a technique in which the salesperson mirrors the customer's behavior, gestures, facial expressions, and even speech patterns to create a more comfortable and trusting atmosphere. This helps improve the emotional connection for better communication. Actually, in the world of psychology, this is called establishing rapport. This skill is taught to coaches, psychologists, salespeople, negotiators, diplomats, intelligence officers, and so on. It's a state that occurs in communication when there's increased alignment, mutual understanding, and deep trust. For this to happen, the salesperson needs to connect to the customer, like connecting to Wi-Fi, and then manage the conversation. These are all the channels you can connect through, and examples will be described here, how it works. Facial expressions, gestures, repetition, speech patterns, pace of speech, tone of voice and intonation, active listening. And in sales, it's very important to use this when presenting something. Let's look at a specific example. The situation is selling project management software. The salesperson hears the customer. We're looking for a system to help our team better coordinate and complete projects on time. We're currently having problems with deadlines and communication. What the salesperson says, I understand you need a system to improve team coordination and help you meet deadlines. Our software is specifically designed to solve such problems, providing effective communication and project management in one place. What did the salesperson do? Paraphrased what the client said, adding in their company and product. The advantage of using the mirroring technique: establishes trust, improves communication, increases rapport. It's important not to overdo it, not to turn into a monkey just copying the client, and to be sincere. That is, genuinely have a desire to help the client. Working with recommendations and testimonials is also an important aspect of customer service sales that helps build trust in a product or service and improve the company's reputation by attracting new customers. How does it work? When you make sales, try to collect as much feedback as possible, request it, use surveys and questionnaires, analyze, see what people are saying, respond to feedback. Thank for positive reviews, address negative ones, use all of this in marketing and sales, use recommendations, and monitor and improve your position. An example of working with feedback: if you receive a negative review, it's helpful to respond to it, apologize, clarify details, and offer a solution. And when everything is resolved, publish a positive review. How to use recommendations. When a customer tells you, or you see a customer is happy with what they bought, tell the client the following: if you liked our service, would you recommend us to your friends and colleagues? You might even offer some kind of reward. Homework for those on the course. Rewrite the spin technique questions to fit your company and your type of customers, and test them in sales by describing your experience, or compose a value proposition for your product or service using the template from the supplemental materials. Books to recommend. Of course, Spin Selling by Neil Rackham and The Sales Acceleration Formula by Mark Roberge, VP of Sales at HubSpot. It's a fantastic book. Very cool, very interesting. I recommend it. Movies: The Wolf of Wall Street. A very interesting movie, a classic in sales, and the lesser-known Glengarry Glen Ross. Another movie with legendary actors also dedicated to selling. What's next? Next, we'll talk about methods for finding and attracting customers. Also, if you're training with a supervisor or if you have a sales manager, I invite the manager to join the course as well. We have a sales formula course, a sales management course for executives. And the sales mastery course, which you learned about today, I invite you to take it for $300. That's all. Thank you, everyone. See you soon. Bye-bye.